So, welcome to the Captain's Table. We have a special guest. It's March time. March means March Madness as far as NCAA basketball. And we have the head coach of the University of Portland, the Portland Pilots, Shantay Legans, with us. Shantay, how are you?
I'm doing good, Uncle Dave. I wish I was playing instead of being on your podcast, to be honest.
Well,
good.
You just blew my cover. You called me Uncle Dave, so you might have to explain that to listeners down the road. But we've known each other for a long time.
Yes, we have forever.
Yeah. So
forever.
You definitely didn't have an easy path to be where you are now in any respect, right?
No, not at all. I grew up without a father, single mom, place to place, in and out of different boys clubs and in and out of different schools at certain times growing up. But, my mom did a great job of putting some, very unique people in my life that, put me on the right path and found an outlet. And basketball was an outlet for everything. And it was a way that, that I got through a lot of different things. Don't do good in school, you can't play basketball. So I did good in school. Don't do good in school, can't go over a friend's house. Don't do good in school. All those things, it could always relate back to basketball at the time. Until I started, like I said, got some pretty special people in my life as I started moving forward in life. And I thought my mom did an amazing job of finding the right people, and she did an amazing job herself. But I had a great supporting system as I grew up.
Was there anyone that introduced you to the love of basketball when you started off as a kid?
No, man. When I had to go live with my grandparents for a little bit, I just remember just bits and pieces. We were playing basketball. Me and my next door neighbor. It was actually a girl named Keisha that went to USC, but we would play basketball. We'd pull out our trash cans and sit them on the edge of each person's driveway, and we just play one-on-one and shoot baskets into the trash can for a long time. And we didn't get to watch much sports on TV when I was with my grandparents down in LA. My grandfather was a pastor, and my grandmother was the first lady of the church. So the only thing we got to watch was the Laker games and football games. And so that's the only thing I got to watch on TV. And so I think that's how I started liking the game a lot. And then, the older kids were always playing basketball. And that's the only time I got to play hoops. It was after school or, either with Keisha across the street or I got to stay later at school, which was awesome because it was so much chaos at my grandparents' house.
It sounds like the Love and Basketball movie that I remember seeing growing up.
And when did you get involved in the Big Brother program?
I got involved in the Big Brother program. So I moved back in with my mom probably around like fourth grade and third or fourth grade. And we were going to the boys club at the time, and I was playing ball at the boys club. And, she's just like, you need somebody, you need somebody in your life that can really help you out. So she called up UCSB because, or the people called UCSB, Esmeralda was her name. And they called up UCSB and said, hey, you have a young kid here who loves basketball, would love to have one of the players, be his big brother, and at the time, I didn't know anything about how college kids, especially basketball players, don't have that much time to do stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, that's the kind of person, that's what I wanted to be. My big brother was a player, so, he's around basketball and everything like that. But they called and, Jerry Penn, who was the head coach at the time, asked his assistants, hey, do you know anybody who would want to be a big brother, a big brother to this young kid who's, who obviously needs some help and things like that. And Ray Lopes was 29 at the time, and he said he would do it. And so when I found all this stuff out, and then, I found out he was 29, my first thing was, he's way too old. I don't want to hang out with that guy.
You wanted a playmate besides a big brother. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted a player. And, but my mom says, no, you're going to do it. And, the rest is history. He's been in my life since about, going at fourth, fifth grade. And he was a college coach at UCSB. Then, just like everything else broke my heart. And, I didn't know about the profession. I thought he was going to be there forever. And then he ends up, leaving Jerry Penn and going to go work for Kelvin Sampson at Washington State. And so, I was devastated. I thought, again, it's just always happens or whatever. But we kept our relationship, and, that was I had to get on he paid for a flight for me to go visit him in the summers up in Pullman. Again, I didn't know anything about Pullman or anything like that, but I got on a plane for the first time ever. He paid for it. I sat down. He flew with me, actually, and we talked about college basketball and how I'd break all Bobby Hurley's record, all these records. I wanted to break the assist record, and so I'd spend a lot of time with him in the summers. And then he got the job at Oklahoma with Kelvin. He went to Oklahoma with Kelvin. And then I went and visited him in Oklahoma. I thought that's where I'd go play, but he was the assistant coach at the time. And I spent a lot of time with him. I mean, my dream was to play for him, but, I didn't get why I couldn't play for him, even though he was the assistant coach. So, Kelvin, they liked me, but I thought it was a weird dynamic. So I ended up going to Cal, and he ended up being at Oklahoma. And then going into my senior year at Cal, he became the head coach of Fresno State. And so I said, what the hell, I'll go play for him. And, it was one of my dreams to play for him. And I got to do that. And it was a lot of fun, when you go back and look at it. And it's funny because I talked to all these kids about fit and, what they need to do with, where they go. It was the best year of basketball I've ever played. I was the best I've ever been in my whole entire life. It was my redshirt year. And then the next year I averaged about 16 points and 6 assists a game, or 15 and 6, which was amazing. I was part of a team and I was a big part of it. So, it helped me see.
So you had Ray behind you all this time, but you had Sal Rodriguez.
Yeah, I had Sal Rodriguez at the boys club. I had you. So those three, you three guys were huge in my life, as I grew up. And so it was Ray Lopes, Sal Rodriguez and Dave. And so, those guys were guys I leaned on for almost everything. And then Mark, obviously, Marimura, were guys I leaned on, constantly all the time. And that's who my mom leaned on. And if I ever got in trouble, that's who she'd call. And if I was ever stuck or didn't know what I was doing, that's who I'd call.
So for people who don't know, part of this being an underdog is you were about 5'8", right?
Yeah, well, I'm 5'10", but you always call me. I'll take 5'8".
I don't know. I think you're stretching that 5'10".
Don't let him cheat you out of those 2 inches. I'm sorry. No.
I tell you.
But you were also, if we're going to call you 5'10", you weren't one of those 5'10", 190-pound guys like an NFL, undersized cornerback.
Not even a little bit.
You were a light 160 maybe, right?
Yeah, I was 160. Going into college, it was a big deal because I was 160, I was actually 150 something I was 17 when I took my first, went to college my first year. And then I'm a July 30th baby, so I turned 18. But I was like 150 something going into my freshman year. And then I got to my playing weight was about 175 my senior year of college. But I was always really, thin, but I was really strong out here. So,
okay. So even if you're 5'10", you're still a small point guard.
Very, yeah.
And not to embarrass you in front of whatever this audience is going to wind up, being.
That means you're about to be embarrassed.
you would not say you were the most athletic kid, right?
No,
you're not running a 4.40. You don't have a 3-inch vert. You don't have super long arms. So
no, none of that. No, I had none of that. But what I figured out young is I could manipulate the game the way I needed it to happen at certain times. I could, get my teammates to really feel like they're, in a certain spot. I could manipulate the defense and find guys, and I could shoot the ball really well. So when you could do those things, and I understood the game really well. But it all, I always thought I could figure games out and how to win them. It didn't matter. You just got to win that one game, and I thought I was really, really good at that. Yeah, I was not athletic at all.
You had to be a pretty heady basketball player, obviously, if you weren't that athletic, and yet you scored 15 points a game in your senior year with about 6 assists per game. You were someone who obviously had a good feel of what the game was supposed to be like. Did you reflect that? Did you have that innately in you, or was this just the coaching that you received from Dave and some of the other folks?
No, it was from an early age. You're always trying to win a game, and any game you play. And so when I got around people who loved the game, and I would have conversations with all of Dave's coaches, like Josh Oppenheimer, Eric Harden, all these guys that he had around. We'd always talk basketball. I didn't talk about anything else. There was nothing else that I thought I could connect with anybody about, because that's all I knew was basketball. And then the people I was around, I spent time with, the adults in my life, they love basketball, and so it just came on. I just You talk about reading books and all. I would never read a school book, but if you gave me a basketball book, I'd read that 4 times,
Wow.
the same book. It didn't matter, and I'd see it differently. And so, coming up, I mean, I got to spend some summers with Dave and Josh and things like that in the summer, and Mark, because my mom would say, hey, go spend a week or two, and I would do that. And we just talk basketball and go work out and, talk about just hoops all day. It wasn't like it was a.
So you got to refresh my memory.
Yeah.
You confirmed that I was right. You were driven down to L.A. every weekend for that spring league at LA City College as an 8th grader. But
Yeah.
I can't remember. How did you come to us? We weren't recruiting an 8th grader in Santa Barbara.
No,
Who at the time
Liddell
was probably what, 5'5" when you were an 8th grader?
I was probably shorter than that.
Yeah.
If you want to be honest.
Okay.
But Liddell, you remember Liddell Hill?
Oh yes.
Okay. He had a team at the Santa Barbara Classic or Easter Classic in Santa Barbara, and we beat PTI. I think it was PTI at the time. We beat the Rebels or whatever. That we beat some LA teams. And I was with the Goleta Boys Club, so it was just me and a bunch of kids from the Goleta Boys Club, but I was getting to play, and I was, at that time I could dribble, I could shoot, I could do everything that the older kids can. I could shoot threes, I did everything. I can go, get to my left. I was left-handed, so it was obviously an advantage playing against little kids. But I was dribbling through presses and scoring, and he said, hey, you should come down to one of our practice. He talked to my mom, and at the time my mom didn't know what to do with me. So when he came to talk to my mom, he said, come down to a practice. We have this all-star team, or he said a traveling team. And he started talking to my mom about it. My mom was she was slick. She wasn't like going to get hustled by it. And I've gotten told by a bunch of people, come do this, come do that. But I guess Liddell, said, hey, come check it out. There's a practice or whatever. And so we went down, and I remember going down, and I was in 8th grade. And, in Santa Barbara or Goleta, I was the man. Like I was in 5th grade. I was in 8th grade. I was better than everybody. I was pretty sure I was going to play varsity, all this crazy stuff. And I get down there, and the first drill we do, we're doing the finishing drills, and then we go 3-on-2, 2-on-1. And there was a kid named Tariq. I told you the story. He had tattoos on his, he had tattoos. I was
that's
blown
right. Tariq
away.
Bragg from Westchester High School.
Oh my God.
That's
And
right.
he went and dunked the ball on a 3-on-2, 2-on-1. And we had a water break, and I went and told my mom, it's time to go. This is not for me. These kids are out here balling. This ain't for me. And I just remember her saying, I drove down here, you're going to stay here, and we're going to go through this. So, so after that first day, I was scared, to be honest. I was scared the first 30 minutes of practice, and then he started playing, and then I couldn't get enough. I would always come back down to Santa Barbara and my practices and what I learned in LA and with the in practices down there, I would take them down, and I would do the same thing during that whole week until that next Saturday. I would do it against the kids that I was playing against. I would do everything that I learned that whole week, and then Saturday I would go up there and see if I can do it against the better players, and then I started again on Monday. I'd go up there Saturday and Sunday. My mom would drive 2.5 hours both ways. And, for her, she said it was the best time of her life because we got to spend, 4 hours in the car together, and, me ripping and running and not, being able to stay still. That was a time she got me for 4 hours.
Yeah. Your mom mentioned to me, she liked it because she was able to actually have deep conversations with you.
Oh yeah. She asked me everything. We talked about everything. That's when we became super close. Me and my mom would fight. I was always, upset that I had to leave early when I was younger and different things like that. But having the opportunity to have that time with her, and then, what'd you think about today? She learned basketball. She knew everything about hoops after a little bit. She was with me, and she knew that's what I loved. And I mean, we talked about basketball players. She could tell you anything about a player. She would give your opinion about it. Dave knows she'll give an opinion about anything. But what she never did, she never bothered the coaches about me playing or anything like that. She would tell me, you're not any good if the coach ain't playing. You better start playing. It ain't on you. The coach wants to win. If you were good enough to win, he'd play you. I could tell you that. She would always tell me that.
Well said, right? I mean, that's just common sense, but people and parents especially, it's tough for them to think that way.
Yeah, you could. I couldn't get in the car and tell her that, oh, man, they did this wrong to me. She says, no, you did it wrong. You turned it on. That's why you're sitting down. She always would give you the truth right after, even in the devastating moments. But she was always great. And those are the best times I've had, with my mom. And we got really close. I mean, anybody who knew my mom knew how close we were. And so that was some of the best times of my life growing up, driving those hours. I don't know if anybody would ever do that, a parent or anything in the middle of, their weekend, just go, wake up at 7, drive down there, get down there by 9:30, and then, get into the gym and go to practice, and then stop at that little Taco Bell on the way back, eat Taco Bell, get the nachos with the cheese that Dave hated, ate, and then, get back in the car the next day and do it again.
Let's take a
lot of parents that are doing it.
Let's take a break right here, and we're going to go to commercial, and then we'll come back in a couple minutes. Okay?
Perfect.
So, welcome back to the Captain's Table with our guest, Shantay Legans, current head coach of the Portland Pilots. And when we left off, we were hearing about sort of his upbringing as a young basketball player and his experiences. And I want to jump now. We're going to skip past high school and all that stuff. We're going to do a little bit of high school because we got to talk about your recruitment. Because, again, you had one offer, and you were playing for our club team, the Los Angeles Rockfish, and you had some pretty good teammates on that team. And I'm trying to remember if you weren't you obviously weren't the first to be offered, but were you the first to commit?
I was. My grandfather. I was. You get all the recruitment and all those things, and you get schools to the East Coast and all that kind of stuff is going back. All this crazy stuff, and when my grandfather was, alive, he always said, hey, you just got to go to a school that you like. And once you go you pick a school and you're done. Just deal with it. And so when Cal offered me, we went on that visit, and I told the boys on the visit I was going to go. And then I had to talk, Brian and Nick into doing it. I know, Brian was thinking about it anyway, but once I committed, I thought that was them for, them to go. And the recruitment process was weird for me because, like you said, it was pretty much the only West Coast school that offered me.
I thought it was your only offer.
No, well, we had nothing. It was Gonzaga. Gonzaga called, and they did all that. And then I had all the stuff when we went back east for the Bob Givens and different things. I had small, schools from over there offer me and do things, but it was the only school on the West Coast that ever offered me.
Okay.
Duquesne came in because they hired Josh Oppenheimer. They wanted to get the starting 5. It was they were trying to get me. I wasn't a dummy, I knew what it was. They were trying to get me to get my teammates, because I was close with everybody on the team. I had a kind of personality, and so I was friends with every guy. There was no cliques on that team, and it was one of the best teams I've ever played on, at least talent wise. And so I think a lot of schools said if we can recruit Shantay, then he'll probably bring at least 2 or 3 of his teammates with him, and that's at the time. I mean, everyone, recruited us that way. And it was pretty cool. It was a good thing. I mean, I was on the team with Brian Weathers, who was a top 50 kid. I was on the team with Nick Vanderlaan, who was a top 50 kid, or should have been. I was on the team with Delron Johnson, Raphael Baruman. That team was loaded, and then you had Russell Lakey on the bench. I mean, all these kids, and it was probably one of the only teams that you could say that we all played team basketball, but everybody on that team except our leading scorer, I believe, Eric Seitz, is the only one that didn't go D1, but everyone else went D1 on that team of 10 or 11. It was something crazy, and it was a really good team. We were all close. We're still close today. I still talk to a lot of those guys today, which is pretty cool. But yeah, the recruitment part was wild, but I knew I was a tool to get the other guys, which, it's life, right? As you get older, you start figuring stuff out. That's why I was 5'10", hanging out with the big 6'10" guys. I knew that I was actually eating off of them. They didn't know that.
Well, I think you're being a bit modest, though, because I'm taking a look at the stats. In 1999, as a freshman, you scored 9.4 points per game. according to this, and 3.7 assists, 2.3 rebounds. That's pretty good coming in as a freshman, going into Pac-10, I believe at that time, not Pac-12 just yet.
Yeah, Pac-10. Yeah, don't
Pac-10 basketball.
Don't mix me in with the Pac-10. We're Pac-10 babies.
Yeah, exactly.
When ballers balled, is that what you're
saying?
There you go.
Yeah. There you go.
When they were hooping, when you had to play against Stanford, who was number one, flip around and play Arizona, then flip around and play UCLA, then flip around and play USC, and then Oregon had Brittany. Yeah, that was crazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It was fun. No, I was in a good spot. I like you said, I knew the game, right? And I knew how to play it. And, there was really talented kids on our team. There was a kid named Circus King. That was a senior when I was a freshman, very quick, couldn't shoot it. But he was very quick. So I knew he couldn't shoot it, but I knew I couldn't guard him. So I'd let him shoot every shot in practice that he wanted to shoot. Anything you wanted to do outside the key, I'd guard him at the free throw line, pressure. And I'd be like, why would I pressure this kid? He's faster, stronger, and then the other kid that was one of the most talented kids. And I wish if he was playing today, I'd make sure he was on my team, was Dante Smith. He wasn't, he's what everybody loves today, right? A guy that's not a point guard, but a guy that's not a two guard, but he can handle it. He can score it. He's more like a lead guard, but at the time, no one knew how to use him. And so he wasn't a point guard, so he couldn't really run the offense. And he wasn't a true two guard because he was like 6'3.5", 6'4", right? So, he was in a bad spot, but he was probably one of the most talented kids I've probably ever. That's
a great lead into something I want to talk about with you. So you get this scholarship, and we've heard a little bit of a rough upbringing coming up and all that. So you get this scholarship, you're thrilled. You go to Cal, and then I get a call from you. I think at the end of your first week or something. Do you remember you were upset? Do you remember
my freshman year?
Yeah, you remember what you're upset about?
Oh, probably something. What was it?
Okay, so Dante Jones had been the city player of the year in Baltimore.
Yeah,
it was like
Dante Smith.
Dante Smith. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It was like a big deal that Cal was able to go to Maryland and get this kid, right?
Yeah.
So,
yes,
and they brought him in to be the point, right, at the time.
Yeah.
And so you were playing the first week, and in the scrimmages, you were with the walk-ons and the scholarship guys who basically didn't play versus all the kids that were like in the first 8 or something, right?
Yeah.
And you were calling me to tell me, Dave, we're beating the best guys every time that we play, and I'm beating Dante, and still he's the number one guy. And I think I said something to you like, "What? Have you been at school for 4 days? I mean, can you?"
Oh yeah, no. I remember now. I was ready to pack my shit and go. I was ready to pack my stuff and get out of there. I do remember because I didn't call my mom. I called you, and you told me. You said tough. I forget what you told me, but I remember you telling me just keep doing it and you'll be fine. But I do remember so I was part of the gold squad the first couple of weeks of practice, and so the gold squad is exactly what I was on their team with the walk-ons and like the guys that never played the year before, and it was playing against all And so the thing that was really killing me was when we go back to the it's not like nowadays. How the guys act, but we go back to our dorm rooms and we start talking, trash about the day. Now everyone's too touchy to talk about things, but we go back and talk about how I killed and you killed and I beat you one-on-one. And so we go back to the room and I'd be like, we beat y'all. I'd be talking trash, and then what they could always, in the whole conversation was, you're with the dudes who ain't playing, bro. Shut up. And I'm like, we beat y'all, and he said, it don't matter. And so. I just remember they always would tell me that because I lived with Joe Bryan and Nick Vanderlaan. So Joe Ship, who's a LA kid, Brian Weathers down from, played with us down there, and then Nick Vanderlaan, and then myself, we all lived in the same dorm. And so they were with the players. They were hooping. Yeah. Again, I was the guy that they just brought along for the ride pretty much. And then, as the year kept going, my whole thing was to win every drill. Make sure your team's, you beat the other team. You outplay the point guard. You don't turn it over. You don't do anything. I went. Once the season started, I went like 4 or 5 games without a turnover. That was one of the things I was most impressed about. And I was shooting like I was a top shooter and like one of the top 5 shooters in the country from 3. I'd be in the gym all day, and so that really fueled me because I'm like, I'm killing, man. Why am I not playing with the dudes? And so. it's just funny you brought that up because that is something that they would always end it with you're on the gold team, man.
Yeah,
This is
well,
blue.
it's part of your being an underdog, and I want to say
Yeah.
that it actually only took 2 weeks. I think at the end of 2 weeks they made the switch. It's like, okay, you're off the gold squad and you're playing with these guys,
Wow.
And I think you articulate it very well. That it wasn't that Dante wasn't a very good player, but but they didn't know what to do with him since he wasn't a 1, and they brought him in to be a 1, and he didn't have the feel for the 1. It wasn't a talent thing, a physical talent thing, and so they needed somebody to run the club. And coaches are always watching. I still tell point guards, they're looking at the score when they're looking at point guards. Is your team winning because you're like the quarterback of a football team?
That's exactly it, And I will never say I was more talented than Dante. Dante was so good at basketball. Like when I got there in the summer for summer bridge and we were playing pickup, I'm like, man, well, looks like. And he was a freshman. He was a freshman because he redshirted the year before. I said, well, looks like him and I are going to be. Looks like he and I will be battling it out for a long time. I'll be, carrying his bag, so to say, because he was that good in the summer. And then once, and this is what a lot of kids don't think of. Like I wasn't a really good at the time, like a really good pickup ball player. I needed to know what we were trying to do to win a game. Pickup ball, you're hooping. It's talent. You're just going out there, you're rolling the ball, and I'm gonna make a play, and I'm gonna be able to. Beat this guy, and I know I can make a talent play. I was talented, but those guys are uber talent. He was unbelievably good at basketball. And but once we got into practice, and once there's a score there, and once there was, we're trying to win, and we have what we have to do, and we have to get this kid the ball, and we have to make sure keep this kid happy with a couple jump shots every now and then. But Sean Lampley's the man, but we have to try. That's when you start figuring out who the guys are going to play. Like. You could be like sitting on the end of the bench and be the best player in the world, but you just don't know how to play with other guys. That's why it's a team sport. And so I was good with better players. And luckily, like I said, I played 4 years with some of the best players in the country. And it wasn't about me going to get buckets, but I think what helped me, and I tell this to a lot of people and a lot of AAU kids and a lot of high school kids, is I would average 30 points for my high school team. I would go down, I'd average 30, get every shot I wanted. Then I'd go play with the Rockfish and get like 9 points. And have like 15 assists and win all the games because I got the best of both worlds. I got to be the man, but then I also got to be a part of a team that had a bunch of men or a bunch of the mans on their team. And so I figured out how to do that. And so I thought that really helped me. In my development of understanding like when a team needed me to score and when a team didn't need me to score. And so I think that helped me too once I got to Cal.
Sounded like you were a natural floor general, having some understanding as to the attributes of your players, your competition, seeing who would be best utilized in various positions. And so you were a distributor and certainly understood your worth and your talent. And I would assume that carried over in reference to going into your coaching career, which we'll talk about later on. But just the ability to be that floor general, was it something that was innately instilled in you, or did you get that from childhood, even with your mom?
Well, you could say that because, like whenever we play games, even with my brothers who they're much older than me, but I'd be put in positions to try to, help win the game. And I was always like better at certain things than other kids. At the time, I wouldn't say I could throw a football, I could catch. I was pretty much, good at all the sports because I had older brothers, I had older cousins. And so I figured all that stuff out. But like understanding the game and figuring out ways to win, I just think that was just one of the things that, growing up with my mom, she'd cheat in cards, try to figure out how to beat me in rummy, we played Parcheesi. And so we just figure out ways to win. And so as that went on, it seemed like my whole family was like that. And I bled over to the game, bled over to basketball. And so once I started figuring out ways to win, and I wasn't, I could be really cutthroat and Dave, I'll fight with anybody on the court. I mean, I used to get beat up a lot on playing basketball. I was the smallest guy, but I'd fight with the biggest dudes on the team. But it was one of those things where they knew that I was doing everything I could to help them win. And then I would do anything to help a teammate win a game. I'd make them look good all the time. And I think that's just something that just came with me, wanting to be liked actually maybe, just making sure everybody on the court was good, but I also got to be myself. and be expressed, and get to express my, myself. I used to, I got to let a lot of things out on the court that, you're not allowed to do just, being a regular, I'd say student or a regular person on, walking around. You get to throw an elbow here. You get to hit somebody hard with a scream. You could scream as loud as you want. You could get your guys together, And so I think that, growing up and having, the right people around me and being able to focus that, I wouldn't say anger, but a lot of, you just could focus. You had the right people to start focus you in the right direction with a lot of different things where you didn't have to lash out, in class. You didn't have to lash out, just doing something stupid. I was actually really blessed with having, like I said, those people in my life and these coaches that put me in the right direction and understood that, this kid actually pretty good at basketball. He has a future. And so,
I do want to clarify,
really
when you were with us anyways, never once was I tempted to get up and say, Shantay, shut up.
No.
No.
And I wouldn't stop talking.
No.
No. Solomon, I had teammates. I was a talker and I didn't stop talking. The game would start. I'd start talking to the other team. I'd start going, and I had no problems with him. We played pickup ball. I'd talk. I would get in fights with Solomon Hughes when I was in college. I cut him off. They held me back. He punched me and right in the mouth. I got hit in my mouth by a big 6'11" guy. Boom. No, I was messed up. I went down and grabbed the lock because I was going to go beat him up, and then 25 minutes later. Solomon's such a nice guy. He comes to my house and says, "Hey, Shantay, I'm really sorry, man." I'm like, "Oh, I'm good. Come on, let's play a video game." I didn't care. It was just in the game. It was in the moment. Focus to do a lot of different things on the court that you're not allowed to do outside the court, And so I think that really helped me with my leadership in different ways because people want to follow a guy that's fearless, I think.
So we're going to take another break in a sec here, and I just want to say, you actually set a few records at Cal. And then you transferred, like you said, and you had a great year after a redshirt year at Fresno State. And then you go overseas for 2 years to two different teams in Holland. And when we come back, I want to pick up right there, and we'll talk a little bit about that experience and then how you wound up getting into coaching. All right, so we're taking a break from the captain's table. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the captain's table, and we still have Shantay Legans on, who's got a lot to say. Very articulate young coach with a bright future up at the University of Portland as the head coach of the Portland Pilots basketball program in the WCC. So when we left off, we were talking about we've gone through your college career, and then you played pro ball in Europe for 2 years in Holland, right? Both years.
Yeah. In Holland, I played 1 year. It's called Weert, WREET, and then another year in Groningen.
Now, you probably could have played more. So now, why did you just play the 2 years?
Well, the first I didn't play when I first got done with college. I took that year to start my coaching career. Actually, I was a grad. I don't know if you're allowed to say it anymore, but I was a grad assistant, but I was just an assistant. I wasn't a grad. I wasn't taking classes. So, but I was with Fresno State and Ray Lopes. I said, you know what, I'm just going to stick it out and coach with him and go from there. And then he, some bad luck happened with him, and he ended up retiring, not retiring, but they let him go, and so he wasn't a coach anymore in the industry. You guys know, once the head coach is gone, everybody's gone. You ain't have no shot at nothing else. And so what I did was, immediately when I called Mark Mamura, and he was helping an agency called Courtside, and I told him that I needed some help. I needed to do something, and he said, "Hey, the best I could do is get you to a European camp in Europe." Luckily, Mark loved me. He didn't make me pay for it because I had no money to do anything. So he got me there. He said, "I can get you here, but you got to figure it all out yourself." I played well. Short story, I got to play for a team over there called Weert, and then I played for the next year for another team. And then as I was watching and playing, super frustrated. You see guys that you played against that that you can compete with, that are playing at a higher level, And then you're also looking at yourself and being like, well, I'm 5'10". Where is this really going to take me? I'm not the most athletic guy. You start thinking, you're over there. It's tough. You do a lot of soul searching. You're by yourself. You're with maybe two other Americans, and those two other Americans are only worried about themselves and what they're going to do with their money and how they're getting more money or what stats they need. And when you're not at a really, high level, it's a lot different. And so, I was just starting to think, like, when am I going to start my life? Like, what am I going to do and how am I going to do it? And I love basketball. And so what was I going to do? What was the plan? And so I was making like, again, dumb, which I was making like $2,800 or $3,000 a month, which is good money. I don't know what I was thinking, but at the time, at the time you're hearing your boys talking about, I'm making this, this, and this. And you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? And, I was sitting over there and I told Mark that, I probably could play one more year. And then obviously he was like, nah, you can't. Yeah. You're pretty much done. I don't think they want you back. I didn't put everything I had into it. And, I was just thinking about everything else and what I could do. And so once I figured out I was done playing, I started having to start figuring out life. That's a tough spot to be. Again, that's a tough spot to be in as an athlete. You don't know what you're going to do. And, your athletic career is over, at least, playing wise. And
yeah, because you're only 24, 25 years old.
Yeah. I mean, you don't know what's going on. You think your whole life, and especially if you're a confident player, you're going to go to the league or you're going to make money playing basketball forever. And so that was kind of a jolt to my system. I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I went back to Santa Barbara. I got a job at Carl Karcher Enterprises because I was coaching the Laguna Blanca team. I was the assistant coach. If you look at my bio, I make sure they put it in there. Assistant coach for the Laguna Blanca basketball team in Santa Barbara. And those kids at that school could run the world. I'm telling you, their parents were presidents of Carl Karcher Enterprises. I mean, these were big time people. And so, I got a good job. And again, it's who you know, right? So right. I got a pretty good job. So I was making good money. And I was coaching the AAU team, not an AAU team. I was coaching a high school team. I was the assistant coach there. And, I just remember wanting to get into coaching. And again, it's who you know. Now it's a lot different, but I know Eastern Washington was looking for an assistant coach. And so after Europe, I went to CKE. I worked at a small high school with probably, 200 kids in it. And then Lope said, hey, there's a job at Eastern Washington, and do you want to take it? And I said, yeah, why not? And he's like, well, it's for $17,000, but you're an assistant coach and you can recruit. And, I got on the phone and I talked to the guy. The guy said, we're looking for this. And what are your expectations? All I knew though was high major basketball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have a car, you have a phone, you have an office. And so I'm thinking, I'm getting all that, and so when he says, hey, if you're interested, let me know. And so instead of, waiting for him, I packed my bags and I drove up and I drove to Eastern Washington and I met the guy and he gave me the job. No experience at all. I don't know how far this goes, but I lied about everything. I remember calling you and asking you about all these players and everything I needed to know. And I wrote them all down and I act like I knew them all. And, I name dropped every person I've ever known,
How were the other coaches, since you were inexperienced? Did they actually really help you to get into the job and a routine and things you should be doing, or they kind of just?
No, it was a tough go. I mean, Jamie Matthews was the associate head coach, and I became close with him. The other coach was Rasheed Wortham. He was a young guy, and then the other coach was me, Jamie Matthews, and Rasheed Wortham, and they were cool. They were good. Jamie was a head coach before he came and coached with his friend, and Kirk Earlywine gave me an opportunity. He's a really good X and O's guy. I got to learn a lot from him. He worked under your guy who was at Utah. I always forget his name.
Oh, under Majerus?
Great. Yeah, he worked. Okay. Yeah, he worked with Majerus, and he was kind of, from the stories you hear, he was kind of similar to that, or try to emulate that a little bit. But they helped me a lot. But my first week was, I had to take the recruiting test, and then you're gone. I mean, I was a straight recruiter. Go find players. That was my job. Once that happened, and then like everything else, you start just working your tail off. You're the bottom. You're making $17,000 a year, and you don't have any idea. You're just in basketball, so you don't know that you're poor. You don't know that you're not eating, you don't know anything, right? You're in basketball, you're nervous, and you love it again, and it's
Right.
fun, and you're a part of it, And again, it's something that, and it's something that you lived and breathed, and so like I did everything. I asked anything they wanted, and I did more, and I gave them all the work, and so that's how I got into.
Now, how many
into coaching
seasons was Early Wine your boss?
2 years, I believe.
2 years.
Okay.
He was there 2 years.
So then we get a new coach, and he decides he's going to keep you on.
Oh yeah. So Jim Hayford, he became the coach. He was at a D3, basically down the street in Spokane, and they gave him the job, and he came in, and everyone told me, hey, you're probably gonna. My stuff was packed up. If my car, I was all packed up, ready to go back down, and tell everybody I gave it a try, and figure out what I was going to do again. I was in that mode again, but my girlfriend at the time was my wife now. She says, keep going to the office. They didn't fire you yet. You're still getting a paycheck. And so I kept going to the office. No one was there, but I kept going to the office. I kept working guys out. I was helping, players figure out what they were doing. I was literally running. I had people calling me about scheduling. I had no idea. I was telling yes to everybody about scheduling, everything. I was being friends. All these coaches were calling me, trying to get games. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. 100%. Can I get your phone number? Let me get your cell. I was trying to, start talking to people. And so I just was going to the office every day. And then when the new coach came, it was me and another coach who were there. And they were like, what do you want to do? I was like, I'd love to stay here. Lopes said, just play the game with him and figure out what he wants to do. And he says, you may have a shot, just because he might not know a lot of people in D1 basketball, which he didn't, luckily. And so, I ended up becoming his bottom assistant, and he didn't give me any more money. He's like, this must be the cheapest guy in the world. But he brought over 2 other guys, and I was his bottom assistant. I did I figured a way out to make myself, useful. I did anything they needed. Scouts, working out guys. I was first one in. I mean, when you say first one in, I mean, there was heating, and there was, I lived in the office, I ate meals on campus whenever they had I was not making anything, but whenever they had anything on campus, I'd show up. So I knew everybody on campus. They're having, something for, this week. I was there for that week. I'd help them clean up as long as I got a free meal. I was doing everything on campus. I didn't do anything but hoops. And so, I became part of that culture. And so when that guy got it, when he did really well, I was his associate head coach. I was there every step of the way. And then once he got a head coaching job, it was easy for me to slide into the head coaching spot because I became part of that university. Everybody knew me. It was really comfortable. I recruited dang near all the guys on the team.
And you got lucky because you met your wife.
Yeah.
And you got luckier in the sense that she played basketball. So she kind of understood how this whole thing works as far as available time, what the job entails, yada, yada, yada. So, yeah.
Talk about the fact that in 2014, 2015, Eastern Washington finally turns it around with a 26-9 record in the Big Sky Conference. You win the regular season, you go in, you win the tournament, and you qualify for the NCAA basketball tournament. What kind of thrill was that in that area?
It was unbelievable, if you look at that roster, and a lot of people, there's not a lot of guys that were recruited Division I players, Tyler Harvey, I think, was the main guy on that team right out of LA. He went to Bishop Montgomery High School. He walked on to Eastern Washington and led the country in scoring that year. We had a kid named Venky Joyce that was all league that no one knew about from Australia. He was a Hindu kid. He was unbelievable basketball. We had some guys that no one could really see. It was one of the things that, like, you're watching it. It's just, it felt like, when you're seeing Tyler Harvey hit step back threes and lead the league in scoring. When he came in, he was one of the smallest guys. He came with a broken foot. He walked on for 2 years. And then he takes his team and he does this, he becomes a NBA draft pick. And so it was something, to be a part of. And when you talk about working, I was in the gym every day and he was there every day except Sunday.
Oh, wow.
And so, he'd come to my office and say, hey, let's go shoot.
He's your type of guy.
Yeah.
A real gym rat.
I'm like, dude, but you're thinking, like, I'm having to deal with, all the scholarship guys and all the things they need and all this, that, and the other. When this kid comes in and says, "Hey, let's go shoot, coach," and I'm like, "Oh my God, this kid again." Jesus. But we went every single day, and he wanted to put me through a drill every single day. And so it was like, "Hey, what should I be doing?" I said, "Let's go. I'm here every day." And so he came every day except Sunday. And he's making, he just sent me a picture of him and his wife. He just had a baby. But, that was an unbelievable basketball team because they were all together. They all had one common goal, and that year before that, we were close. We didn't make the conference tournament, but we were right there. We were a game and a half behind it. So that next year, they really blew up. They became a real close team, and then it just took off from there.
Wow. And then in March of 2017, you become the head coach, as you had indicated before.
Yeah.
Could you believe that you were actually the head coach of the university at that time?
No, I couldn't. It was unbelievable. I remember calling Dave. I had an idea. I wrote down, what I wanted to do, who I wanted to hire, all the things I wanted to run. It was all scripted out, like what I wanted to do and everything. But it was still, there was only 360 jobs around there,
right.
Division I head coaches. At the time, it was like 353, and I was 36 or 37 years old. And I was one of the youngest coaches in college basketball, and so it was like right from there, my thing was, how am I going to win and do better than the guy that was ahead of me? Because he just went to the tournament and just got another job. It's hard to follow guys like that, right? And so your thought process is, well, shoot, you got to get to the tournament,
right.
And that's the measuring stick now. Because if you're going to, and I never even thought about leaving Eastern Washington. That wasn't even in my thing was to make that place as good as Gonzaga, and so that was one of the things that I was, looking forward to doing, as that. And so when I sat back, when we got the job, my wife and I went through every single thing. We went through every single phone call, text message, everything. We stayed up all night because, like you said, she was a part of that whole thing. She was a hooper. She got it. And so it was easy, but, we moved into that thing pretty easily and, a little nervous, but I was more excited than anything. I couldn't believe it that it was happening. It's like, you always think nothing good happens to me.
And you got an in-house person to critique your coaching.
Oh yeah. And then, yeah, you got an in-house person, like you said, Uncle Dave, to critique your coaching night in, night out, every decision you make. And so recruits, players, and you know what? I will give her this. Every recruit she didn't like ended up not being very good and having to leave. Probably they ended up transferring anyway, which is crazy. She always was, this kid's not a kid you can call. I'm like, he can do this, and this. In year 2, the kid's ready to go. Couldn't do it, And so she has been on point with that. But no, it was you just once you got it, it was just like, okay, where's the contract? Let me sign this paper. I remember giving Bill Chase one of the biggest hugs in the world because you see it happening, but you just don't believe it's happening.
Right.
And so Bill Chase was the AD at the time, was now in North Dakota. Once Jim Hafer took the job in Seattle, I thought 1,000 things were going to happen. It wasn't going to happen for me, this, that, and the other. It's just impossible to happen. And the AD called me in my office, called me into his office and said, "Hey, would you like to be the coach?" And I said, "Yeah, why not? Of course." He said, "We'll sign this contract." It could have been for $20 I'd have signed it, but it was for more money than I ever thought I'd make ever in my life, and it was one of the best moments, of my life. I got my first job. It was pretty cool, and I just remember sitting back and not really believing it, or waiting for something bad to happen, and they'd be like, "No, Jim Hafer's coming back. Some bad stuff happened, and he wasn't able to sign his contract, so you won't be, your contract." I was just thinking of every possible, negative scenario that could possibly, occur, and so it didn't. And we the rest is history. I was really excited about it.
So you went through 4 straight winning seasons, doing an excellent job of coaching there, and then in 2020 you won the Big Sky Conference Coach of the Year, and.
Yeah.
Obviously, that had to be pretty exciting, but then 2 days later, the Big Sky tournament was canceled due to COVID.
Yeah.
How disappointing was that?
Well, it was a really tough time at that time. So we went to the tournament championship every single year I was the head coach at Eastern. And so my first year was like, we had one of the better players. Our second year, we had some guys miss and we weren't the best. And then we ended up being really good in the Big Sky, getting third and going to the championship. And that next year, what you're talking about, is the year we really played well. What's crazy is I've never missed a practice or a player. Never missed a practice as a player or a coach. But that year was extremely hard because COVID hit and we couldn't make it. But on that Monday of the championship, we had 2 games to play for the championship. My mother passed away.
Oh, wow.
And so it was one of the craziest things ever because I was going to go to practice. I was, I had everything ready. I had a plan. I talked to my brother. I walked into the office and started going to the basketball court, and I was just trying to think about, what we were going to do. And I couldn't do it. I broke down and had to go home. But the first time I missed our Monday practice, and then, everything settled and we talked about everything, and, we went and won that championship. And it was like, my brother's always giving me a hard time. She says, well, if you ain't going to be able to go if she wouldn't be able to go to the NCAA tournament, my mom, she's definitely going to drop COVID on us, so we can't go anywhere. So, and if you knew her, you knew that was the case. But no, it was really tough. But I felt good about where the program was. I felt good about winning a league championship. I felt good about a lot of different things. It was just a very sad time because my mom passed away, and but I got to see during that time we got to see. I had some friends that I was really close to come to my mom's service, and I haven't seen them for a while. We got guys together. Uncle Dave was there. I mean, it was very, it was bittersweet. I got to see some people and hear some stories about my mom and different things like that. So the next year I knew we had to be really good, and everybody came back except for the MVP of the league. And so we did it again the next year.
All right. We are ready to take our final break, and then we will come back and finish up with our guest, Shantay Legans. And hang in there. We'll be right back. After a commercial break, we are back again to the captain's table, and we still have Shantay Legans on, and we are wrapping up with Shantay. And I want to say, isn't it amazing how we can cover basically 41 years of your life in an hour? I think that's pretty good. This should be, there's an old show before your time, actually before my time too, called This Is Your Life. And that's what this sounds like. It's been wonderful going back because I've had the privilege to be part of your life and reminisce about this stuff. And of course, yeah, it was. I remember how you were with your mom's funeral, and it was great to see all your guys there too. And as much as you can say this about these things, it turned into a nice day, even though it was a tough day.
No, it was a day that I won't forget. I mean, yeah. Brian Weathers and Solomon Hughes showed up. I had some, those guys I played rockfish with.
Yeah, Ray was there.
The guys,
yeah.
Lowe showed up. Sal was there. I mean, everybody that meant something to my mom and myself. It was kind of, you see it everybody, and it's just everybody, I grew up with. And, you see a couple of her friends, and, you could see how much she poured into me because the people around me knew her so well, and so that was one of those things that, you look back on. It was a nice day. It was pretty good setup, and we had a great meal afterwards at our favorite place, and we ate well. And she liked that Cajun kitchen spot, and we all went there. It was a good day. It was a day that we haven't had probably ever. With everybody together.
Yeah, I was. It felt good to be up there with you at that time. Yeah, I want to say. Of course, Nick brought your coaching record and the Eastern Washington record into play and all that. So, in your last season, you won the Big Sky tournament. Mm-hmm. So, Eastern Washington's doing pretty well. And then, bingo, you're moving on. So, was that a little bit of because you had, I guess in a way you could say Hayford built it, but then you built it up, similar to Mark Few coming in at Gonzaga after Dan Monson. So, I'm sure you were ready to do something else because you like a challenge, but it couldn't have been a snap decision. Boom! To all of a sudden to say Portland.
It was crazy because my wife and I didn't mind being at Eastern Washington. She's from Serbia, and so her only place she's been was Eastern Washington. We went and played basketball there, and she spent her whole time there. I was there my whole time. We had our kids there, so we felt really comfortable there, but. The athletic director at the time, not the person who hired me, we got a new athletic director who came in, and she didn't want to give me anything on my contract that, would resemble, being the, the best team in the conference for the past, 4 years. And so, I mean, being the all-time winningest in 4 years, win percentage-wise in the Big Sky was, it didn't mean too much. And we just went to the tournament, and we haven't not been to a championship. And so, she was really like wishy-washy with our contract and how she wanted to do things. And it really made my wife and I feel really uneasy, especially, now you got two kids and, you're not living, 16,000 and just, living in the office. Now you got, I got two little kids and I have a wife now. And so it's like, now you got to figure out what we're doing, for the family. It's not just me anymore. If it was just me, we'd figure it out and we could roll and keep it moving. But we have a family now. And so now the priorities changed, a bunch. And so when she wouldn't, budge on, giving my assistant coaches, a full year, she wanted to give month-to-month contracts, and me a 6-month contract. I'm looking at every coach in our league; they got guaranteed contracts. I had a 6-month. So if I would have got fired, they would have been a 6-month deal. And so I'm like, that's not. I got an agent, and I had him look at it. He said, "This is the worst deal in college basketball." And he put something together for me, and he said, "Hey, this is pretty much on par with low budget, schools and this, that, and the other. You just want to be compensated for just 1 year, even. It's not even for the fact that it's fully guaranteed." And the things she would say back were, they weren't very truthful. You can't have guaranteed this. I'm like, well, Washington State has that, and UW has that, and Gonzaga has that. I said, I'm just asking for a year. So, anyways, I didn't feel really comfortable about it. I did love that place. We had a really good team. All the kids would have came back, and so when I was, approached by a couple schools, I said this was a school that I was really excited about because it was in the Northwest, which I don't mind at all. And it was in the WCC, which, has multiple bids going to the conference tournament. Going to the NCAA tournament. And it has some of the best coaches to coach against, Mark Few and Randy Bennett and those guys at the top of the league. You get to coach and challenge the best player, the best coaches, especially from where I was coming from. So I was really excited about that. And so it was very exciting. It was challenging. I was told, don't take this job because, it's not a really good one, but I'm looking at the job I was at and, where it went from and, where we got it. And I said, why can't we do that here at Portland? Portland's a great city. The community's behind it. And I was really excited about it once I got here and went to campus. And,
see, that lays in with who you are. See, you are the underdog. So here's this underdog job. And you're saying, I've been able to, I know this word's overused, this phrase, but I've been able to overachieve all my life, right? So what's the big deal? I've got probably better resources here in a higher league. So what if they've been at the bottom of the league? It's just a great opportunity. Right?
It is. And then, you go through and you just got to find, and the thing is, you talk to all these other players and you recruit and they're like, well, they get this, this, and this. And I want guys like that. I want guys who want to go beat those guys and take what those guys got, And so, that's the whole thing. You're right. And I didn't even look at it like that, to be honest. That's the first time I really thought of it like that. Until you said that. And so, I looked at the job and there were some other ones that opened up. I just thought, particular Sin City wouldn't be good for me. Knowing who I am and, what can happen in certain spots. So I said, there's no way you want to talk about food. It's all in one spot, Uncle Dave. And so, that wouldn't have been a great idea for me. So no, we saw this one and this, the athletic director here was always honest and straight up with me. And, I thought it was the best spot for me. And, it's still on the West Coast. We get down there and see people and my family could come to games. I could see you guys at games. And so it was a perfect fit. It wasn't like, oh, this is I haven't been given, this is the job. And you got a $50 million budget. No, it is what it is, And so, I'm lucky to be here. I'm really excited about, what we could do here.
But you've now been a head. I'm sorry to cut you off. You've now been a head college coach for how long now?
Going in my 9th year next year. Can you believe that?
And you're going to turn 41. So you were 32, right? And you're still considered in that profession a young coach, and now you have 9 years of Division I head coaching experience. So,
Right. So I'm going to my 7th year.
Seventh year, okay. So Portland, maybe right now is still suspect, but I would imagine you're a pretty hot prospect out there as far as people know your name and look for this guy. He's a rising star in the profession type of a thing. I mean, I know you don't think about it that way, knowing you and also knowing your job. You don't have time to sit in front of the mirror every day and tell yourself how great you are and how wonderful you are.
Yeah.
But you are aware of that, right? I mean, you're in a pretty good position, I would say.
No, we are. We are. I mean, you look at it and you always, it's crazy because I just had a teacher conference meeting with my about my daughter, and she compares herself to everybody else and where they're at. And it's funny because I'm like, why would she do such a thing? And then I get home and I'm comparing myself to all these coaches that are going to the NCAA tournament and all these coaches that are getting this. I'm like, gosh dang it, that's where she gets it from. Me and my wife, we compare all the time. It's just, it is what it is. But we also, sometimes, look on the bright side of things and say, we're actually in a good spot. We've done good here. The athletic director likes us here. You get, guys will come to you and tell you, I don't look at the Twitter stuff as much as the next guy, but, Twitter says nice things about you when jobs open and, you see all that kind of stuff, but you're humbled because you just got your butt kicked all season long by all these coaches that you said you're better than. And so now you got to go back to the drawing board and come back next year and be even better. And so, it is good, and it's really hard to get in these spots. And when you look at certain coaches and you see how long they've been there, you instead of, being a hater, what the kids will say, I'm more of a guy that, appreciates, how they got there. And so, I want to, looking at Mark Few, he's been there forever. Looking at Randy Bennett, he's done it for 20-something years at the same spot, doing it the right way. And he's got a team in the NCAA tournament and, playing for championships. That's the goal, man. That's what you want to be doing. You want to play for championships. And so, you look at that and you see yourself, but you see yourself still far behind some of those other guys. And you just want to keep edging closer every day. You want to keep getting better and going after those guys, man. Just like when I was a player.
Yeah.
Go after them. Like there's nothing else there.
Well, you have the drive. I have no doubt that you're going to get there. Hey, that is, we've run out of time for this show. And actually, we could probably do a 2-hour segment with you and get into other stuff too. But an hour is all we have. And, for Nick and myself, you were a great guest. And I think I can speak for both of us. We enjoyed talking to you.
Coach, you were fantastic, and I really appreciate you spending the time with us. It was enjoyable hearing your stories and just going back in time and listening to all the different things that you encountered. So, pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Dave told me to keep it PG, so we didn't want to talk about any transition homes or anything like that. We kept all that stuff out.
So that was
enough. We didn't get to the nitty gritty.
We'll have a beer or two somewhere in the future and talk about that there.
For sure. So, Shantay, thank you again, and I've got to sign off now. I'm going to tell everybody you need to tune in tomorrow for another episode of the Captain's Table, and it's going to be basketball again. Thank you.